Okay, hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on hosting your accounting software in the cloud. My name is Kim Solomon, and I'll be the moderator today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dan Wharton, and he's going to get us started.
Kim, thank you. And first, want to acknowledge happy birthday. Thank you for doing this on your birthday.
Thank you.
I hope no one here at the company said you had to work on your birthday. Hopefully that was a volunteer, and I'm certainly glad you did, because I love the company here on these webinars. So thank you very much, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Dan.
All right.
Definitely volunteer.
Good. Having the ability to work from home is no longer a fringe benefit that's offered by employers, but a part of the new norm organizations could have to accommodate for some time. The COVID-19 global pandemic has shown that organizations will need to shift their thinking and make cloud software part of their standard operating procedure. However, hosting your fund accounting software in the cloud is not the only part of the equation. We have to ask ourselves questions like, does your nonprofit have processes in place to manage a remote team? Are documents, approvals, expense reports, and payments, other documentation also digitized? What if a check needs to be signed? Thank you for joining us. We're going to review the types of requirements and best practices that should be in place during a crisis. We'll explore how MIP Cloud can meet those system needs and help your organization run efficiently at any time in any location. Today's agenda. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items to cover. First, today's webinar will be recorded and will be emailed to you within 24 hours for an on-demand access, along with a copy of the slide deck. We'll cover introductions, who is JMT, benefits of hosting, processes, and then Q&A. We would love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to send it through the Q&A button tab at the bottom of your screen. We'll be answering all your questions at the end of the session. It'll take about 45 minutes to deliver the content, and that should leave us a good 10 to 15 minutes to answer questions from the audience. All right, let's get going. First, who we are. And to tell a good story, one should have perspective. JMT Consulting has 27 years of experience in the not-for-profit sector. I'm here to share some of what we learned along the way. JMT Consulting is the largest MIP reseller, not just in volume, but also in size. We have regional offices in Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, and Patterson, New York. Today's presentation features the MIP Cloud, but we do want to let you know that we have other solutions that we recommend. JMT has vetted hundreds of vendors to bring you the best-in-class solutions for payroll, financial planning and analysis, cemetery management, AP automation, document management, and a whole lot more. Rest assured, everything we do will lead to a better process and greater efficiency. That's the name of the game. How did we get our start? Well, we were founded back in 1991 by a nonprofit finance professional herself, Jacqueline M. Tiso, hence the name. So Jackie was in her fourth role as a nonprofit finance person when she left and started JMT Consulting. She's been a customer of a few software and technology implementations, and at that time, wasn't overly thrilled as a customer in what she'd experienced. So her lifelong passion for nonprofits is for nonprofits. And with having been a customer who's less than pleased with the technology services that she received, it was in that spirit that she founded the consultancy nearly 30 years ago. I haven't been working with MIP for quite that long, but I did start my career with the publisher, with MIP, and transitioned over to the consulting world a few years ago. Both I and the software publisher are located here in Austin, Texas. And yes, the barbecue is better. Here is a sample of small sampling of our clientele. Community Hope, Unite Here, MAD, Mark, Nachi. There's a theme here. These are all nonprofits, and they're all based here in the United States. Of the 2,000 organizations we served over the approximately 30 years, Nearly 800 of them are still active today. Approximately 250 of those are hosted in the cloud. Now, does this mean that the remaining 550 organizations are housing their accounting software internally? Not necessarily. Many of them are using things like remote desktop or VPN to make a remote connection into company software. Hosting is not for everyone. Let's acknowledge that now. JMT can absolutely help you understand the requirements and help you weigh your options and determine which path you should take. One thing to know here is that at JMT, your mission is our business. I'm going to highlight one customer story. This is Health First Network. Health First is a nonprofit located in central Wisconsin. They help families with reproductive and nutritional services. They've been a customer since 2013, and being a nonprofit healthcare provider, they've had a lot of complicated issues to accommodate for. Also in that, they have to accommodate for multiple funding streams, insurance payments, donations, grants, fundraising efforts. And in order to alleviate some of those manual processes the organization was doing, they first chose to implement MIP. I met with them again a few years later in 2017. The organization had big plans for the future and really wanted to expand its offerings. So Health First started by implementing the HR and employee timesheet modules, and in 2018 finally migrated over to the cloud. So they implemented the software first and then rolled it out to their employee force after phasing it out. This made sense for them as they had 8 different locations and employees that traveled between them. Really, the end result is improved accounting, streamlined HR, and more tech-driven capabilities. These all help them transform Health First into an organization that is today and help them serve more vulnerable populations all over the state. Health First really is one of many great success stories. The things that prompted them to migrate to the cloud are all here in this presentation. So let's take a look. Sorry, a little bit of a joke. Couldn't help myself. Hopefully you guys find this as funny as I do. Back to the presentation. So what are the most compelling reasons that an organization is going to migrate to the cloud? Well, let's look at each of these bullets. IT resources can be broken down into 2 categories: personnel and infrastructure. Personnel is all about who is going to keep the lights on. Many nonprofits under $5 million annual operating budget have already elected to outsource their IT to a third party. That makes the most sense for them as it allows the business to focus squarely on delivering the mission. The infrastructure is all about hardware and software. Servers and Microsoft licensing, networking applications, data storage, support contracts, all of these can be offset by migrating to the cloud. Earlier I mentioned things like remote desktop and VPN. This would allow you to work from home, but there are potential drawbacks. You often hear about slowness or lags when using a remote desktop or VPN connection. That goes back to the type of hardware that these are running on. There's also a ton of maintenance involved with each of these solutions. So you're paying a little bit extra in IT maintenance fees. Again, you may be offsetting an infrastructure, but you're paying a little bit more on personnel. The last and probably most compelling reason to migrate is really the philosophy or paradigm shift. Your board has just simply decided that everything has to go. It's all going to outsource to IT. We're getting everything into the cloud. It's happening a lot. And if it does happen to you, you still have the option to pay the IT consultant to set up a VPN connection, or you could contact a publisher to migrate your software to the cloud. So that latter camp is really what we're focused on today. What does it take to get the publisher to migrate you into the cloud? And which is better for you? You aren't going to select an IT consultant who doesn't have experience with hosting, but you do need to ask if they have experience with the accounting system that you want to use. This is something that can lead you into trouble if not vetted properly. So why do we recommend MIP Cloud? An overview. from a compliance standpoint, Rackspace will happily provide our clients with a copy of their certificates. Specifically, you're looking for an SSAE 16 certificate or a SOC certificate. These are the two most important. And I would encourage you to do a little bit of background and research on our friends at Rackspace. Huge company, great reputation, great service level agreements. And that plays into that 99.9% guaranteed uptime. You don't want anything less than that number from a provider. Some providers will even go and say something like 4 nines. They'll give you buzzwords like 4 nines or 5 nines. That's just simply saying or differentiating between 99.9% or 99.999%. And since I know all of you have calculators, you can equate that to a certain amount of minutes per year. What else? Lots of history with MIP. So with that history come all the native integrations with third parties who have been writing solutions for MIP customers for years. Things like Timesheets and electronic requisitions and grid reporting, financial analysis and planning, FP&A, excuse me, HR, things like that. Also, it comes with it 2 different ways to import. This could be an API, an actual application programming interface, where you have hired a software developer to write a bridge that connects MIP or your accounting system to another third party. And if that can't be done, then we can always rely on the industry accepted flat file import. Some of you folks might be familiar with the term definition files. This is just taking a spreadsheet, coding it in a certain way, and either importing information to MIP or importing it into a third party. This can also work really for anyone. Don't feel as though you have to be pigeonholed or you have to hit a certain classification. This works well for organizations as large as Girl Scouts and American Lung Association to hundreds of very small foundations. They're all being hosted in the MIP Cloud and everything in between. Again, it really has to go back into those 3 reasons, not necessarily the size of an organization. And I think this is most important, but Community Brands is managing their own software in this cloud environment. And this makes a recipe for long-term success. Let's go on to actually taking a look. So let's jump into the application. And the first thing that we're going to notice is the dashboard. This is the first thing you see when you log into the application. There are 6 different views or roles that can be customized. This one's cash management, and this one's financial performance. But they're all based on either AP, AR, budget management, cash management, something called an executive view, or overall financial performance. And in this first example, we can see the cash management have the ability to customize the screen, move widgets, add or remove widgets, or even apply filters. The widget is really one of these boxes, like the age payables or outstanding payables box. I also have the ability to drill into the data. So if I want to click on any of this, I can hyperlink right into the actual data itself. I could see a complete list of transactions that are summarized in the graph. I could see all the GL codes, amounts, percentages, and if I actually clicked on the GL code, I can then drill into document numbers, descriptions, session IDs, posting dates, and a heck of a lot more. The second example, this top example, is perhaps maybe for your board. Maybe they've chosen a set of key performance indicators for you to manage. It'd be a good idea for you to embed those KPIs into the financial performance dashboard itself. This way, you can assume that your accounting staff has access to all the information. But what about maybe in use cases that don't apply strictly to finance or accounting? What about executive directors? What about program managers? What about other figureheads that are involved with the budget process? Well, MIP has a unique way of providing restricted access to each of these reports. An example is, let's say you want program managers to see budget versus actual without A, them having to bug you, and B, seeing all the financial data. Maybe it's just the account codes that only they're responsible for. You can limit that access so that you can provide that setup. Food for thought. since we're talking about the cloud and reasons why you would or wouldn't. If your software isn't living in the cloud, creating and sharing a financial dashboard really isn't possible. Administration. Some of you got onto this webinar and might be worried about maintaining proper policies and procedures. You're not there to not necessarily police your employees, but at least make sure that you are adhering to all the best practices that you've established in the organization. What are you going to do to manage a distributed workforce? So let's see how we can embed some of those policies and procedures into the software. And we'll first talk about security rights. And I'm talking about using your software to manage users and their ability to perform certain activities. For example, I can prevent certain users from processing a large payment. I can block their access to payroll data. I can limit their access to read-only. I can also make it, again, so that a program manager is only accessing the budget data that they are responsible for. I should also have the ability to see what my staff is doing. And there are default reports, summary organization audits that'll show you who logged in, when they logged in, what did they do, and what was their activity logged out, and whether or not it was a successful event. This is going to help you answer a couple questions. One, are they using the software correctly? And two, are they being productive? Similar lines of thought, how can I enable my team to be more productive? They're working from home and I'm used to working hand in hand. Well, when it comes to user preferences, I can set entry defaults. Maybe it's a specific set of codes that they use routinely. Maybe they want the system to memorize certain activities or keystrokes, and or memorize a particular set of entry selections. This is especially helpful when making routine journal entries. MIP also comes with a set of organizational preferences. I can select different processing types. I can block transactions from being posted outside of a current fiscal year. Session IDs can be automatic or manual. Similar thing with document numbers where they can auto-increment the values. Even if there's a performance monitor that combs through each database to see if everything is in balance. So every ERP, every accounting software should come with an attachment feature, and MIP is no different. Above, we're going to take a look at some of the areas where you can implement data repositories, specific places where you can store attachments. I can attach bank statements, purchase orders, invoices, reports, certificates, licenses, IRS forms, receipts, pictures, agreements, grant applications, info on fixed assets, and the list really goes on. So here's a few snippets. Fixed asset, AR, budget, EFT, electronic requisitions. Once it's in the software, it really just makes it incredibly easy for your team to perform their duties. It even makes the audit process go that much smoother. Again, this is probably standard or par for the course, but making this information available so that everyone can access it, not just through a company shared drive or shared folder, actually getting it into the account system is far more productive. I've got a couple things I want to share with you, and I'll dub these when the boss is not around. Picture this, everyone now has to work from home. Your employee uses an electronic form to submit their purchase request. The form asks basic questions, description, amount, received by date. They attach a screenshot, maybe even a link to the vendor's online catalog. They hit submit. The request goes to their manager by email. The manager sees that the purchase request, that the request itself meets all the minimum requirements, and they go ahead and click the approve button. The requisition is then delivered electronically to accounting for coding and secondary approval. It takes them about 30 seconds to update the requisition and about 60 more seconds to check the budget. All is well, and the requisition is finally approved. Purchasing receives the information and sees that the order can be best fulfilled by Staples.com. Doesn't even have to leave the accounting software to complete the transaction. The vendor punch-out function makes it super easy to make the purchase, download the order details, update the requisition, and include all that information to everyone in the process, update the chain of command. This is possible by having a cloud-based system that has an electronic approval or workflow module, some sort of utility built inside of it. And creating electronic workflows and approval processes is easy and really only possible when you have a cloud-based accounting system. FYI, or maybe a heads up, if you're worried about making a transition like this, maybe you're using a paper-based system, maybe you're worried about some of your users adopting this type of new process, I can share with you that other clients have had a lot of success rolling this out in phases. It was not they didn't use an all-in-one approach. So they started off with departments, or many times it's departments, but there are other circumstances. So anyway, talk to us about what you're thinking of and what other obstacles you may be facing. One of the bosses not around, part 2, what happens when they need to sign a check? Perhaps you need a signature on a PO. Maybe it's an approval. Maybe it's a signature on a paycheck, or lots of paychecks. So here I have a blank cardstock. By using a tool that has the right utilities, I can use MIP Cloud to create a workable form from inside the software. I can print checks that already include a company logo as well as a digital signature. So this can be done with really just about any document or voucher. You can do this yourself. You can prompt your boss to do this while they're working from home, or with the right approval, you can do this yourself. Just remember that the security controls inside of MIP will help you limit who can access this feature. My son calls me a boomer all the time, so I figured I would let him have some creative input on this particular slide. Really, I just need a quick break so I can grab some water. We still have a ton to see. Quick reminder to use the chat button to submit questions. All right, let's go ahead and get back into it. Next, let's talk about ACH. ACH has been a lifesaver for many of our clients, especially those that had to transition very quickly to working from home. We're going to take a look at ACH for vendors and customers, as well as ACH for employees. Without really making any significant changes, really any changes to the existing payment process, you can enable certain payments to be made electronically. MIP creates a file that is then shared with your bank. It's an industry standard format, National Automated Clearinghouse Association. This is a NACHA format. You don't have to worry about strict banking rules or even worry about customizing software before you start using it. For the most part, it is very plug and play, especially after you input all of your banking information. Some of the other benefits from using this particular module, you can process check and voucher payments at the same time. Customers can be set up and paid the same way as vendors. You can send payment notifications via email. You can even establish payment discounts for those who opt into EFT. Why? Well, think of the other hard costs that are now offset. You're not paying in postage, you're not paying in stock. There are some costs associated with written checks. On the other end, ACH for payroll. MIP will allow you to print checks and create the direct deposit again at the same time. Remember, you can create custom checks and vouchers and even embed an electronic signature. Similar to EFT, MIP will create a bank file using the NACHA format. Receipts can be emailed to the employee, and we recommend sending a copy back to your payroll department in case of an SMTP communication error or some other system for checks and balances. The direct deposit module is a very simple module to set up and use. Again, something you absolutely want to ensure you have working from home. A major pain when it comes to not being able to work hand in hand or in person, budget time. And this may happen to some of you once a year. Maybe it has or hasn't happened yet. Others, you may be looking at budget revisions on a monthly basis. You may be looking at budget collaboration on a weekly basis. In a lot of cases, I'm guessing that some of you are using Excel spreadsheets for budget management. And I'm going to call out just a few common challenges or things that I've heard from other customers. Water cooler talk. Is this the latest version of the budget? How did a certain cell get changed? Where did this new column of data come from? I wonder if the development team saw my note to their budget proposal. How do I create formulas? I wish this thing had a better collaboration tool. And all that goes away when you have a cloud-based system. I love creating budgets inside of the MIP Cloud interface. Just makes it easier. I can work from an original version. I can select a revised one. I can easily select between operating and actual budget worksheets. But once I've chosen a worksheet, I'll then have the option to select a segment or multiple segments. And when I do that, I want to think about what information I'm trying to compare and at what level I'm looking at when I consider my audience. How am I budgeting? It might be in an expense level. I can look at a combination of revenues and expenses, or I can include all available accounts. Anything I do here is drag and drop. I don't need to worry about creating formulas. I don't need to worry about trying to figure out if I've broken any rules. I can add operators, or I can use trends that appeared in last year's budget and have them carry over. I can also inject comparative columns. You can't do that very easily in an Excel spreadsheet. Got to use software, has to be in the cloud. The moral of the story here is that I can be a complete novice. I am in the software, and it'll keep me in line. It records everything I do. I can't break it. I can always go back. I can always fix it. What does an actual worksheet look like? Well, here's a sample. Looks like it's in Excel. It's not. It's actually inside the software. But for those who are Excel fans, I myself am one, there's really no learning curve here. A lot of operators are very similar. And if we take a look at this, we can see that I included a few different grant segments. I did it for particular grants. I chose to include a previous year's actual and a previous year's operating. And then I asked myself to enter budget over in column H, which has the white background. In this case, the system has populated most of the fields, but I can decide how I want to manage that. I'm just highlighting the fact that all of this is lives inside the software. One thing I can't show, but not here. If we ever talked one-on-one, I could show you that there are lots of Excel-like features in this utility. I can insert, I can drag, I can copy and paste, I can create formulas. There are things in here that you can't do in Excel. You can highlight a group of cells, whether it's a row, column, or a combination of both. I can right-click. Now I can do things like modify all the quantities. Let's say I had a budget decrease of 5% right across the board. Well, I can right-click and enter that negative value so that it impacts the entire section. I can go into the specific cells and do things like add a comment or highlight a particular line item and lock it in. I can also modify on the fly. I can take a particular value and alter its value within the budget worksheet. I can increase or decrease by a specific amount. I can bring in allocations. I can reset some values to 0 or some other amount. There's really no shortage of what I can or can't do. But do remember that MIP does have a way of sharing this information not just with the company stakeholders, but also those program managers and account managers, those individuals who are they're not dedicated financial or accounting staff. They may be managers in other areas, and we can give them access into this whole process, not just reading information, but actually collaborating and working on it with you. So that's enough of budget management. I'm going to jump over to timekeeping. Electronic timesheets. And for the employees, this is a great way to log hours, to access pay stubs and W-2s, to update personal information, request time off, or if I'm eligible, I can even submit for mileage reimbursements. For the payroll department and the others in accounting, this is the best way to simplify the time entry and approval process. Calculations for labor distribution, it's all automated. I can even communicate with employees. There's just no need for paper with this. With software, I can provide my employees with the right options. The data is collected and shared electronically, which makes management and reporting a cakewalk. FYI, we can even connect hardware to the solution. So for those that do have to work from home while others do have to enter the building, or maybe they're bus drivers, maybe they are delivery, maybe they are working on a housing project. All these folks can badge in, whether they're using a smartphone to clock in, whether they're using a badge to actually badge into a terminal, or they can even use something as sophisticated as a retinal scan to clock in and clock out. Just keep in mind that there's many different options in this case. And again, all of it's possible by having your software live inside the cloud. We already talked about the top 3 reasons a customer will migrate to the cloud, and there's more. And if you want to decide to venture down that road, there are a few pricing considerations. MIP has 2 classifications for customers, and pricing is adjusted accordingly. Existing customers can add this cloud service for somewhere in the vicinity of $50 to $80 per user per month. New customers can expect to pay maybe $200 a month for a 1-user system and $475 a month for a 3-user system. Now, expect those prices to increase if you decide to add more modules or users. Both groups can anticipate a one-time setup fee. Our client average is just over $1,300. And one big asterisk here is that new customers really need to make sure that they add a line item for implementation fees. They have to budget for this. Unfortunately, there are too many variables here, but I can't even give you a reasonable guesstimate. But if you really want to know what it might cost to step into MIP, just let us know, and we can issue a proposal within 30 to 45 minutes. So we're actually making really good time. We're pretty much at the end of the presentation, and here's what's going to happen next. There aren't any prizes to give, but hopefully you found some value in the information you received today. There's also lots of potential in the pursuit of happiness. Really, I'm talking about your happiness. We suggest you pursue your interests, find a right partner with a proven methodology who can help you find those right answers, a recipe for success, if you will. We think JMT has that recipe, and we'd like to help you find your happy place. I also want to let you know that our team will be contacting you next week to talk about this webinar. Why did you register? What were your expectations? How will you use this information? Where will you go from here? I'm happy, Kim's happy that you joined us on her birthday, and we want to be there with you in the future. Kim, I think we have a poll.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. I did just launch a poll. If you guys can read that so we can follow up the best way possible with you all, and then just vote on the best way that we can follow up with you.
Perfect. I'd like to be contacted by sales. That would be someone like myself. Fear not. You're here to tell us what you need to do. So if you're just trying to gather more information, let us know that. We have lots of tools, calculators. You can see us speak to any of our customers. We have a ton of different resources that can help you navigate through this path. So if you're early on, don't worry about it. Just let us know that you're early on. We'll provide some information and then wait for you to come back around. If you're past that point, still researching, let us know that too. Or looks like most of you are really just super passive. Don't worry about it. That's fine. Just here to learn, no follow-up necessary. I hope that's actually not true, meaning that there isn't any sort of follow-up, and not necessarily that includes us, just more for your own benefit. You've taken the time to explore this. There's a lot more to explore. There's a lot more to assess. I've given you some parameters. I've given you some expectations, but it's not everything. I just can't possibly include that all that information here in this webinar. However, I can share it with you on at a later date. Just again, whenever you're ready.
Okay, Dan, are you able to take a question now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so we do have one question that came through already, and if anyone else here has a question, just shoot it through the Q&A button on your bottom of your control panel. And first up, we have, does this cloud version allow for interfacing with peripherals such as check scanners?
I'm thinking that you're trying to scan really any document, not just checks, and take that scanned copy and attach it to either the vendor file or the AP batch or a requisition if we're talking about some sort of approval workflow. If that's the case, then the answers are all yes. There are even cases where MIP will interface directly with certain document management systems. There are electronic document management, EDMS is I think the technical name for them, or computer jargon name for them. But bottom line is they will interface directly with MIP so that they can make that upload or attachment process a little more automated. At worst case scenario, you can do something as simple as take your phone, snap a photo, and upload a copy of that photo to really any area of MIP. Did that answer the question?
I think it did, but we'll see if she writes in again to clarify. So that was just one question that we had so far, Dan. So if you had any other, she said yes, thank you.
Okay, beautiful. You're welcome. Just one more slide.
Yep.
All right. All right, I'm going to minimize this this poll here, Kim. This is just a quick summary. And I found this little graphic on Google. Really, I just thought it would be a great tool to help summarize most of what we learned today. Listen, if you aren't in one of the three camps that we talked about earlier, those three camps being, inadequate IT resources, no way to work remotely, or everything is already migrating to the cloud, that paradigm shift we talked about, then chances are you aren't going to be migrating anytime soon. It just isn't a good business reason. There are exceptions to that rule, but again, if you're not within those three, then more often than not, we're not too worried about it. Finance is just one area of the organization. Your board has to consider all aspects, as do you. So it may be wise to outsource all IT and pay that provider for a remote desktop session or VPN connectivity just for your accounting team. you'll have to rely on your IT consultant to maintain your IP system, which, a little bit of a heads up, they may or not be well suited for that task. Don't assume the cloud is better suited for larger organizations. We found actually the opposite to be true. I mentioned earlier that a lot of organizations under 5 million annual operating budget, they just don't have the dedicated IT resources, so they've already outsourced. They've already migrated to the cloud. In many cases, large organizations already employ a large IT department to support them. It's really the smaller ones who tend to migrate faster because they just don't have the people power or the hardware to maintain a modern and secure network. Another example or something to consider. What if you are one of those organizations who grew quickly and inherited a mess of devices and outdated policies? Well, at that point, once you have everyone assimilated to the same culture, now you have to try and standardize. Standardization can get expensive. Migrate to the cloud, and you won't have to worry about whether your phone, tablet, laptop, or PC will work. There are also situations where we need to customize the migration to suit your technology needs. We can vet that early on in the process, and without that experience, you could get yourself into trouble. Long story short, let us help you. That is the end of my PowerPoint presentation. So if there are any other questions, feel free to type them in and we'll address them here now.
Great. Thank you, Dan. We can give it a few minutes to see if any questions come through before we wrap it up. All right, well, I don't see anything coming through, Dan, so if you had any final things you wanted to mention before we...
No, well, yeah, I'll say yes.
Okay.
If you need to get back in touch with JMT for any reason, you have our email address. jmtconsulting.com is our website. My name is Dan Wharton, W-H-A-R-T-O-N. You can find me on LinkedIn very easily. If you wanted to reach out on more of a personal level, reach out to me there, and I can provide you with some information or some tips, tricks, resources. If you're looking for information on MIP itself, go to trustradius.com. Thousands and thousands and thousands of unsolicited customer reviews there. MIP has a great reputation, the gold standard in the industry, and plenty of information there from other customers, not just folks who are in the cloud, but have, more importantly, they've been using MIP for a good long time. New customers are also posting information there too. Really, hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully you got something of value of this. I'd love to meet with any of you one-on-one. And I'd love to listen to your story. So if there's something we can do to help, by all means, let us know. Until next time, thank you and take care.
Okay, Dan, actually, while you were saying that, we did have one question come through. So she says, I am sorry if I missed it, but are there any major limitations regarding features that are available in the on-prem version that are not available on the cloud version?
No. No, the only time where we have to be sensitive towards that is really any sort of integration that you might have. What I mean by that is, in order to make two software solutions talk to each other, you have to build a bridge. That bridge is a little bit easier to develop and maintain when both systems are living on the server, meaning your server. They require a little bit of finesse and experience more often than not, it won't include additional money, but it could. But there are some additional things that we have to watch out for, and some provisions that we have to make during the migration or setup process in order to make them work in the cloud. So again, there aren't any limitations. It's just might be an additional step to get you over there. But once you're in, you're golden. It's going to operate the way that it always has.
Okay.
Sorry, that bridge is going to operate the way that it always has.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up now. So thank you all for joining JMT Consulting for this webinar today, and thank you, Dan, for your time, and we hope you all learned what you came here to learn. And we would love for you to join us for future events and webinars, which you can find on our website, jmtconsulting.com, and clicking the Training and Events tab. So this will conclude our webinar, and I hope you all have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim.
Goodbye.